If you fall, do you stay down or do you get back up? If you fail, do you give up or do you try again? Duel Masters, a franchise that had an anime series, video games, and a card game, all trying to build off what worked for Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Digimon, and more when it came to bringing a series around the world and especially to the US. Wanting to go for a multimedia spread of entertainment to really get this new to a new location franchise up and running and hopefully make it as successful as possible. But the real problem in the end was Duel Masters just didn't take off in the West like it would go on to do so in the East. So while Japan has Duel Masters alive and well, was it just going to turn into a franchise that died over here in the States? Well, yes and no. Duel Masters did die, at least in the US, however, it technically didn't stay dead. When you can see the success of something in other places, and with something like Duel Masters being tied so close to the Wizards of the Coast brand, since that series technically started off as a manga that featured kids playing Magic the Gathering before it would turn into its own thing, it only makes sense that there would be a want for the people behind it all to try and have their game be a hit outside of just one market. I mean, if we're talking Wizards of the Coast here, we are talking about the company behind Magic the Gathering, the company behind originally bringing Pokemon cards to the US, and in working with Takara to have Duel Masters be its own thing in Japan and not really translate into something over here. They didn't want to just let it die without giving it a go again. But in order to make a second attempt, it needed a fresh coat of paint, a bit of tweaking, and a whole new cartoon series to go along with it. This reworking of it all would turn into the series Kaijudo Rise of the Duel Masters. Sure, what the heck, if they can identify the reasons why Duel Masters didn't work out so well in the US and they want to try it again, that's cool, go for it. So let's take a look to see if Kaijudo was the right solution to try Duel Masters again. So, how do you sell a card game? A cartoon, exactly. Yes, to go along with the release of the Kaijudo Rise of the Duel Masters card game was none other than a cartoon series of the same name. Now, where Duel Masters itself originally was an anime brought over from Japan, Kaijudo was fully made for North America. As a series, there was a shift in how they were going to try and tie the series to the card game, and that was by not tying it to the card game outside of the name and creatures. So unlike Duel Masters that had the characters playing a card game, Kaijudo would opt to tell a completely unique story that could build lore for the cards that you'd buy and play with. Also, just real quick, in Duel Masters, the card game that they would play in the anime is called Kaijudo, which would have been fine if at the time the actual card game that was out along with it was also called Kaijudo, but it wasn't, it was called Duel Masters. And then now there would be a Kaijudo card game, but the anime had no card games in it. It's the most interesting mess when you really take a look at it all. Was what this series was, though, good enough as a standalone series away from the card game? Could it even translate into selling a card game if the show wasn't focused on that? Well, there are examples of shows that end up with successful card games without having the main cartoon or anime actively being about said card game. It's not easy. Pokemon, a series about collecting creatures and battling them, luckily had that Pokemania push at launch to make the card game as big as it is. One Piece ended up in more recent years really trying their hand at a card game that has exploded in popularity, and that started 25 years after the original manga started releasing. If Duel Masters already had this pre-established success elsewhere, doing something new in a new way could be a solid path forward to have Duel Masters work under a new name. So how did this all come together, and was it truly the right move? Or did it all just lead to the same result as last time?
Kaijudo, Rise of the Duel Masters.
February 10th, 2012. About 6 years since Duel Masters finished up what it tried to do in North America, Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro announced that they are launching a new franchise here. Kind of. Announced to be coming to the Hub TV network was Kaijudo, a series that was set to follow a kid who can befriend and work alongside these fantastical beasts. And yes, he knows where to find them. And that's also a very simplistic way to describe this series. But it wasn't just a cartoon that was coming, this was a multi-platform entertainment rollout, wanting to bring alongside the cartoon an online video game and a trading card game. As a world leader in creating compelling entertainment featuring stories and fantastic artwork in a variety of expressions, Wizards is looking forward to unleashing the excitement of Kaijudo this year. We are thrilled to be working with the talented team at Hasbro Studios and leveraging the growing popularity of the hub to bring this unique franchise to the US market. That was said by the, at the time, president of Wizards of the Coast, Greg Leeds. This was basically going to be Duel Masters 2, or really just a new chance to see if Duel Masters could work in the US market by having a reinvention of what it once was here and what it still was in Japan. At this point, Duel Masters was still massive there in Japan, even being called a market leader for the demographics it was targeted towards. What Kaijudo was and what it was trying to do was adapt parts of the Duel Masters TCG and morph and mold it into something mostly new, but still kinda the same product. If Duel Masters didn't work out here, let's take the things that we believe still could really work and build it into something that can hopefully connect with audiences in the US where Duel Masters originally couldn't. So now when we get to Kaijudo fully coming out, it looked as if it was its own new card game, with the only things connecting it being that the cards look slightly different and that the secondary title of Kaijudo was called Rise of the Duel Masters, still keeping that name in there. It really, other than that, it was just a retooling of what they already had and making it something new. That was only one side of the release, with the other being the cartoon to go along with it, as that would release on the channel The Hub in May of 2012. The main setup for Kaijudo Rise of the Duel Masters has us in a world where there are technically two worlds, the main human world where our protagonists are from, and this other world filled with strange and powerful creatures. The main goal? Well, having the worlds live in harmony. Kind of. Not really. It's deeper than that. Within the world of monsters, there are 5 groups of them that have different elements or attributes. Fire, water, nature, darkness, and light separate the typings, which kind of is the connective bridge to how the creatures in the card game operate. Now, on the human side of things, we follow the main character of Ray, along with his 2 friends, Allie and Gabe, as they end up getting involved with this group of Duel Masters, each representing the different typings of creatures, as they are there to make sure that both worlds at the end of the day are still there and nothing nefarious is going on. Spoiler alert! Nefarious things are going on. There are these breaches that are happening through the barrier that separates the worlds, with an evil figure named the Choten who wants to take over and rule both worlds by using these creatures, or kaiju, I mean the show's called Kaijudo after all, forcefully pulling kaiju through these holes in the veil or having them make a mess or do his bidding. Obviously, this isn't peace or balance. The main thing that the Duel Masters as well as our 3 main protagonists use to deal with these kaiju attacks is also by summoning forth their own partner kaiju from this other world to help stop, fight back, or calm down the kaiju that are on a rampage or causing problems. Both sides, good and bad, have the ability to do this thanks to their special gauntlets that they wear. Ultimately, with our main 3 heroes here getting to shine thanks to the extra bit of personality that is solely unique to how they use them. Ray basically has a knack for it all, being able to really speak with these kaiju on a level that transcends the differences of these worlds, helping to calm the kaiju causing issues or to understand them, because at the end of the day, sometimes it's not their fault and the bad guys are forcefully bringing them to the human world and thus chaos happens. Allie and Gabe as supporting characters do a lot in a sense of being a good team alongside Ray, and while not on the same level as him, both of them have their own strengths that do get a chance to shine, with Allie being a pretty good backup muscle for the fights going on, as well as Gabe using his smarts to help out more than anything. Choten was once a duel master himself, but is now the direct opposition to the rest of the Duel Masters. And what I really like is that things aren't so black and white and simple. The Duel Masters themselves, while trying to protect the balance of these worlds here, really just come off more as the defenders of Earth. They seemingly only take from kaiju, drawing them in from their world to be used as a partner in battle for the humans' benefit, with the League of Duel Masters having these guidelines that feel more militant than anything. They aren't friends with the kaiju that they summon and use. They don't want anyone who's seen them to know about them or remember them, all in the efforts of keeping the world separate from one another, and outside of what directions are given through the powers of their gauntlets, you're not allowed to talk to them, pet them, or be friendly with them. That's how they operate. Essentially, the Duel Masters are taking advantage of the kaiju for the purposes that they see fit, with the deal only going one way, rather than the kaiju getting anything out of it. These aren't just animals or something that are meant to just listen to your command and that's it, as these Duel Masters would make you believe. The kaiju are these creatures from a complex world that is just like Earth. They have their own sets of problems and challenges throughout their factions and tribes and species, making their world just as interesting, if not more, than the human world. Ray and his friends don't feel the same. They have respect for the kaiju and care about their struggles and don't only want to call on them to use them for their their own battles. There's a real friendship that builds between them and their partner Kaiju. It's a point in the show that ends up making you really understand that the technical good guys who seem to be doing what they're doing for the greater good are also causing harm. You can see how this type of control and attitude gave way for Choten to become the villain he is, and how a lot of problems in the world, whether they be ours or the Kaijus, continue on having those problems. What else made Choten a pretty menacing and messed up villain is how he ends up having this connection to our main character of Rei through the use and control of someone missing in his life, building a pretty interesting narrative on top of what already has a lot going on. In saying that, it doesn't make it feel crowded though. It just makes it feel more impactful for certain characters, and it gives more reason to why the Choten is not so great of a person, you know? For the Kaiju, getting to understand, explore, and take in all that their world and ways of life are all about are a huge standout here in getting invested into the series. The world building here is great, having some deep-rooted lore that lets you understand that the fire, water, nature, darkness, and light attributes, these are built-out communities and civilizations that all feel so fleshed out and lived in. Through these different labels of typings, we see how that translates into their special abilities and beliefs. It feels so thought out, and for it to be the technical attachment to a card game makes me feel so much more appreciative that this has genuine substance that I feel does enhance the card game if you are or were into it. There was a whole lot to love and a whole lot to dig into when it comes to Kaijudo. The series ended up doing pretty decent viewership-wise at first, but with the second season, which was titled Kaijudo Clash of the Duel Masters, it didn't do as well thanks to a new time slot it aired on, despite any good reviews about it. So after 2 seasons with 52 episodes in total, the animation side of Kaijudo would officially come to an end, leaving mainly the card game left to keep this franchise alive in the US. Before we get into all of that though, there is more under the surface that I really love about Kaijudo as a cartoon that I want to mention.
Kaijudo, Rise of the Duel Masters. Choose your creature.
What I really like about the series is how it isn't afraid to tackle other topics through its characters and story that don't strictly relate to the plot or have an angle to sell products outside of the show. Rei is a half Japanese, half white kid who we see get bullied and treated in certain ways because of his race, with these parallels also happening in the parallel world of the Kaiju and how some Kaiju can treat other Kaiju, all of it being explored in pretty realistic ways, not being scared to mask it under something else or tackle the topic in a way that takes away from the seriousness of it. The show, instead of just saying, hey guys, racism is bad, goes beyond this to show that having pride in who you are or where you're from is not a thing you shouldn't have, or feel like something that you need to suppress or hide. We have a main cast of characters that end up really getting to explore and discover who they are, truly getting the time to grow and understand themselves, as they aren't just following into who others think they should be or how others choose to see them as. Rei, Ali, and Gabe all come from certain backgrounds that have caused them various amounts of struggle and hardship that on the surface can't be seen or could be seen by another and interpreted as not that bad, but they don't truly get the full picture or one's own personal journey through it all. This isn't even just about the humans either. This ends up translating into Kaiju characters and what they have to deal with within their own world as well. I think it's really an interesting connection to have Rei's Kaiju partner, Tatsurian the Unchained, be born from 2 different tribes in the world, that being fire and nature, causing him to be seen and treated differently by others, even the same tribes he's from, because of the separation the tribes all want from one another, adding in more commentary to that conversation in general, as well as leading to why Rei and Tatsurian bond together so well. Thematically, Kaijudo does a great job at bringing up the discussions of these issues, having moments of time that let you feel and process what's being said, and allowing the characters to grow through it, as it also lets you, as the viewer, either relate to it or take something away from it. Regardless of this all being connected to other outside mediums, with that mainly being a card game, Kaijudo as a show, by itself, truly is something more than you'd expect it to be that I do feel is worth the watch. But like I said, Kaijudo ended up running for 2 seasons in total before coming to an end, but it wasn't just the show that ended, it was the whole reboot of the Duel Masters franchise in the US. The Kaijudo card game didn't end up drawing in enough new players or bring back those who were playing or still did play the original Duel Masters card game. By the end of 2014, after only a few expansions to the the card game, Kaijudo as a franchise was officially no more. For more than 2 years, Wizards of the Coast has worked to create a great action TCG brand with Kaijudo. While Kaijudo's retailer and player community continued to grow, our product offerings didn't meet the expectations of the broader fan base to engage further with the brand. As such, Kaijudo's Vortex card set releasing on August 29th will be the game's final paper TCG release. This came from the official Kaijudo website announced on August 21st, 2014. R.E. Dalrymple, the at the time brand director for Wizards of the Coast, said, "This turn of events is truly heartbreaking for all of those involved with Kaijudo at Wizards of the Coast because of our own love of Kaijudo and the passion we see and feel from our community. We can't be more grateful to our fans, retailers, and distributors for the enthusiasm they brought to the game and their participation in making Kaijudo a great experience for all." Thus officially ended Kaijudo's run, letting what remaining plans they had already put into production, like the final set of cards and scheduled tournaments, to slowly fade away by the end of the year. Any card shops that still reported in KDDs or Kaijudo Duel Days to Wizards would end up receiving some special kits of unreleased and limited release promo cards as a nice final thank you to the stores who kept supporting the game and those who had an official place to play it at. Duel Masters truly had an interesting history, from its origins to how well it's done in Japan versus how well it did in the US, and then to what it turned into for the US market with Kaijudo. Maybe it did need some sort of reboot or retooling in order to make a larger impact in the US market. Heck, maybe it still does if the powers that be think Duel Masters or Kaijudo has another opportunity to connect with audiences and players here. But you know what doesn't need a reboot or retooling? That's right, it's Gamer Subs, baby! How do you think I'm making these videos? That's how I'm making these videos. Pop a scoop of that into some water, shake it up, and drink it? Yeah, I think I'm feeling energized. So if you want to get some for yourself, go to the link down below and head over to GamerSubs, or just use my code FRINGE and you'll get 10% off. Not just one time, not just 2 times, every single time you make a purchase. 10% off. Just for you. If you use my code FRINGE at GamerSubs, it actually does end up helping support the channel. So a big thank you to everyone who does use my code. I truly appreciate it, and you're helping support the videos. I mean, and check out this drip that I'm wearing right now. This is a brand new GamerSubs drop. It's like multi-fabric layered. It's insane. Even the back's different too. Lots of awesome stuff always going on at GamerSubs, so go ahead again, use the link down below and use my code FRINGE for 10% off every time you purchase. Okay, back to the card game Kaijudo. Funny enough, there is another card game / cartoon series that Kaijudo really reminds me of and has a lot of similarities to. Chaotic. Technically, that series started off as a different series called Grolls and Gorks, and that eventually became the card game Chaotic, that also would go on to have a cartoon series that also featured a dual world setup, the human world and a world filled with creatures that have these different factions, and we'd see the humans go into that world. And beyond all of that, Chaotic ended up dying down, and in more recent years, there has been a build up to it coming back in multiple ways. I talked a lot about this in my Chaotic video, so check out that video if you want to hear more about Chaotic in general. Maybe Kaijudo didn't have enough new to stand out from the crowd. Maybe it felt too similar to other series that were out there. Maybe people were confused with it being in relation to Duel Masters, but whatever the case was, Kaijudo just didn't end up sticking around.
Kaijudo, Rise of the Duel Masters. Choose your creature.
Kaijudo ended up being the second chance to see if Wizards of the Coast, along with Hasbro, could bring Duel Masters over to North America after the original attempts didn't quite connect with as many people here as they wanted. While I think that there were some really cool aspects to Duel Masters, it clearly just didn't click with people here. The card game had its fair share of issues and failed to capture the market share attention that it would have needed to survive here. The dubbed version of the anime didn't have a great dub, as well as it called the card game a different name from what it actually was in person if you were trying to purchase cards and play it as well. And look, it was just an all-around mess by the end of its run here, regardless if you do love it or didn't like it. Where it did still work was Japan, as the card game has been a top choice for those who play card games and hang out in card shops to purchase singles, open packs, and partake in matches with one another. Of course, with this second chance, Kaijudo tried to take parts of Duel Masters, mix it around, change a few things up, and repackage it as something completely new. This was a full-on relaunch as well. Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro Hasbro knew that if they were going to try this again, it needed to be rolled out in similar fashion, which really just means having a full-on new TCG that can also help be promoted through an animated series. So in going from an anime into a cartoon that has a brand new art style, Kaijudo really came out as this new franchise that feels partly stuck in the franchise it was birthed from, and in finding its own identity to go and build from there. They aren't hiding that it's still technically Duel Masters, but they also didn't want it to be fully associated with something that technically failed as a franchise in the US. The card game ended up not taking off as heavily as they had hoped, and the show itself never garnered the viewership that it may have deserved because of its quality, especially when you move it to a bad time slot. Is Duel Masters just doomed to never work in the West? Maybe so, it seems. Every day it feels like there's another huge card game that is taking more space at your local card shop. It's no longer just Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh! It's One Piece, Union Arena, Disney Lorcana, Weiss Schwarz, and so on and so forth. There's just so many. But now we are in a world where trading card games are more popular than ever, with more people expanding their horizons on what's out there to play. So who knows, maybe nostalgia will have people remembering both short-lived versions of Duel Masters, the original and Kaijudo. Maybe more people will see its popularity in Japan and want to learn why it's so popular. Heck, I've been asked to talk about Kaijudo more than most other series in general. So it's clear that people out there do care about and want more from it. So with the card game being one thing, the cartoon for Kaijudo itself is something that I believe can easily be enjoyed as its own thing. It's not like Duel Masters that relied on pushing the card game. No, Kaijudo built its own thing. It wanted to build its own lore. It was a bonus to the cards themselves that had a full-on story, interesting characters, and a fun concept that unfortunately was still all tied to the success of the card game doing well, for the most part. Honestly, if the cartoon had had greater viewership numbers, especially for that second season, and more people were into it at the time, it would have been cool to see them focus on just keeping the show running without worrying if the card game didn't make an impact and ultimately fizzled out. And that's no dig at the quality of the card game. I am speaking generally as to what happened here. So if you love the Kaijudo card game, that's great, and I love hearing that. Kaijudo as a cartoon series was a fun time with a surprising amount of character development, a fun concept that has more to say under the surface, and ultimately left me wanting more from it in the end in a good way. It's not a perfect show. It may not be the biggest standout in the crowd filled with shows from that time, but Kaijudo is a show that you most likely will have a fun time with, whether or not you associate it with Duel Masters or the Kaijudo card game. By itself, Kaijudo works as a cartoon series, and I applaud it for trying to just deliver a narrative rather than solely feeling like it was pushing a trading card game along with it. Regardless if it was the best or the worst card game out there, that doesn't matter to my point. If you've never given Kaijudo a chance, you definitely should. The show's still a great fun time. So how do you feel about Kaijudo? A franchise that's a reboot of another franchise that's a spin-off of another franchise? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you to my Patreon members who help support these videos getting made. It means the world to me and I appreciate you all so much. Consider becoming a member for $5 a month to help support these videos getting made and getting access to some fun extras as well as being involved more directly in the video topics themselves. And of course, thank you all in general for watching. Before you go, make sure to leave a like on this video and to subscribe for more videos like this coming soon, but until then, I've been Jordan Fringe. Later.